The thing about those, what happened with those mini riots, whatever, protests, no sense of sympathy whatsoever for why people might actually be out on the streets. It happens whenever we have a riot in this country, like if you think of 2011 in London, and other riots, I mean, going right back in the 1980s, Brixton riots, Toxteth riots, I remember. People condemned the violence, rightly, as we all do. No one's, basically trying to justify that. But there was always this sort of thought, what is behind this? Let's look at what's behind. Why? Why do people feel?
George Floyd, for example.
Yes.
And they didn't even condemn his violence and his issues.
Why do people feel this way? We should address the underlying issues. How many times have you heard that? Yeah. Except for this one. There was no attempt to actually get to what was behind it. Nothing. It was just coming down on it like a hammer. No one said, well, what's actually behind it? What's the anger? And we have our media, unfortunately, on the whole, to thank for that, because they don't go into it. They just immediately take the sort of same line as the Prime Minister did, which is that these are just kind of...
The Daily Mail.
Yes, I think they're all becoming much of a muchness now, Andrew, really. I mean, including the Mail.
It's sort of them against us.
Yes. I mean, with all my reservations about Twitter and all my reservations about social media generally, I have to thank God for it, actually, in a way, because it's the only way, in fact, you're going to get certain kinds of information now. But I just think it was very telling that there was no allowances made whatsoever for the reasons that people might have just gone a bit wild, which they did. No one is saying what they did was right if they kind of set light to put it. We have to say that, of course, but you should at least try to address the underlying issues. There was no attempt, and there is none.
Hey guys, let's talk about the ongoing immigration narrative, the riots over the summer and the way the media is. Back during the riots, it was said that it would be a matter of time before the right-wing media reignited the same divisive rhetoric. Fast forward a couple of months and here we are again, with the same lines about hotels being filled with asylum seekers and British citizens being left behind. It is the same playbook over and over. Peter Whittle from the New Culture Forum recently posited the question, why is there no sympathy for the people who came out to protest, or rather riot, during the summer? My answer is because their actions weren't rooted in legitimate grievances. Let's be clear. If they truly wanted to protest the government policy or the handling of asylum claims, why didn't they take their demonstrations to Whitehall or the Home Office? These are the institutions responsible for the placement of asylum seekers, not the individuals themselves. Instead, what we saw here were attacks on the powerless, people in desperate situations, who had no say in where they were housed. Worse still, during these riots, there were reports of foreign NHS workers being attacked on their way to work. These are people contributing to society, yet they were targeted simply because they were seen as the other. That's not legitimate protest, that's scapegoating fueled by misinformation and years of toxic rhetoric. And let's address these underlying issues Whittle glosses over. The role of misinformation, figures like Nigel Farage and certain media outlets have spent years stoking fears about immigration. They push the idea that asylum seekers are getting preferential treatment, free houses, free cars and the rest of it. None of it is true, but it doesn't matter. When someone like Farage asks leading questions about why certain information isn't made public, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's planting seeds of doubt, knowing full well the police and the government can't always disclose details for legal reasons. That this deliberate stirring of suspicion led directly to those riots, which were rightly dubbed the Farage riots. Now, Whittle wants to compare these riots to past protests like the London riots in 2011, which were driven by systemic issues such as economic inequality and government neglect. But the recent riots were difficult. They weren't about policy failures or wealth gaps. They were about blaming asylum seekers for broader societal problems caused by years of government mismanagement. Housing crisis, NHS strain and other public issues aren't the fault of asylum seekers. They are the result of government decisions. Yet the anger isn't directed at the policymakers, it's directed at the vulnerable. Why? Because it's easier to blame those with no power than to blame those who hold power and those who are to be held accountable. And now, as predicted, we are back to square one. The right-wing media is reviving the same divisive rhetoric, painting asylum seekers as the problem. It's exhausting, but it's also predictable. And as long as this rhetoric dominates, we'll continue to see division, misplaced anger, and a lack of real solutions. But let me know what you think in the comments. I've been Jake from Just Jake. As always, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. You actually made it to the end of the video. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, which, why haven't you already, is somewhere over there. And also, if you want to watch more videos, also check out over there. I've been Jake from Just Jake. See you later.